Signs of the Southland. Jake, on a scale of 1 to very Big Ten, how Big Ten was Iowa, Michigan?
I'd rate it exactly one B1G in terms of it's the Big Teniest Big Ten game probably all year. Definitely since Northwestern and Stanford. But yeah, what a way to
Hey,
kick off the
at least Northwestern Stanford had it being the worst beat of the season by far.
true. The backwards touchdown into the end zone thingy.
Scoop and
Gotta love it.
score. Scoop and score touchdown to cover. Great job, Stanford. They also beat Washington this weekend. So we'll take that to the bank in the Bay Area.
Pac-12, the new SEC West. Don't at me, bros.
Welcome to Signs of the Southland, everyone. My name is Akshay Schwarn. You can find me on Twitter at AKEASWARAN. I am like a podcast editor and writer at From the Rumble Seat. That over there is Jake Grant, the resident historian, who will probably end up writing a ton of books. You can find him at can_o_bean on Twitter. Unless he's changed it since.
I think I did change that. Jake Grant 98, I think is the move. I can go back to Can of Bean. Those were good days. But
it was a different time. It was a less mature era. Now we're in the attitude era of Mr. Grant.
I just had to bring some a culture of relentless effort and enthusiasm into my Twitter sphere.
And that's why we've standardized on names. Great job.
Perfect.
All right, Mr. Grant. We don't have music this week because our soundboard is borked. But would you
Tradition.
like to? I wish I had that queued up and everything working. But would you like to give us an update on Georgia Tech non-revenue sports?
That is how we usually lead these off. It's a short list today, though.
Womp womp.
We have men's tennis. They're doing so. The ITA is like the non-college collegiate competition, and that's in action for singles and doubles titles. They do a draw, and then a qualifying draw to get into the draw, and then a pre-qualifying draw to get into the qualifying draw, which is a really convoluted way to do it now that I think about it. But we also play in a basketball conference with double byes in the tournament. Yes, we are not one to judge. But we had 4 Tech men playing in the pre-quals out in Tulsa, and Anders Martin already in the qualifying draw. He's a freshman. He is very talented. One of the best pickups that Tech has gotten in a non-rev sport, probably since Caio Pamputis out of Brazil in swimming. But yeah, no, strong freshman class there. Just want to keep an eye on. I've been plugging them a lot lately. But golf was resting. A couple of them enjoyed the softball game that I was at on Friday. Softball's playing fall ball against Jacksonville State. I wrote a bunch of words on them for Yellow Jacket Roundup because RamblinRec.com is not doing a lot of coverage of fall ball, and that's okay because it's not their season. But I figured I'd go check them out in person. They looked really good. Actually, I don't know if you remember last
South Carolina, if I remember correctly. I think it was South Carolina.
Jacksonville State, different Gamecocks.
Same thing.
You say you got cocky with that one.
Ouch.
No, 3 true outcomes team. So on base percentage and slugging very high. So lots of walks, lots of home runs, and the 3 innings I saw were no different. They were up 8-0 in the third after 2 solo shots in the second and third. In the second, they also wound up getting 6 more runs off of a trio of singles, 4 walks, and 2 hit by pitches. So they're pretty diligent at the plate. Looks like even more than last year. Honestly, if this offensive can just bury other teams, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I have lots of thoughts on them in Yellow Jacket Roundup. I won't take up any more time on the podcast talking about them. And then in the meantime, volleyball lost 2 games to 2 of the better teams in the conference. Played Louisville tighter than last year. I think we only catch them once this year, which is good. So now that those 2 are out of the way, really the biggest one left on the the schedule, now that Notre Dame and Louisville we played, is probably Pittsburgh, and we'll see them at I think it's the beginning of November. I'm not too sure, but we go out to Clemson on the road and Virginia Tech on the road, and those are tough to win on the road for this team. But hopefully we kind of get our feet under us. I don't know. It's time to put together some wins.
Mm-hmm. I think another programming note: women's basketball media days for the ACC were last week, and then men's basketball are this week. So maybe we'll have some news come out of there. Who knows?
If we had Ethan on the podcast, he'd probably tell us right now about how media days are outdated and dumb. But it's always nice
we
to
talked
get
at
everybody
length about that last time.
That is true. Football. That's what we were talking about, right?
Media days. Yeah.
Good times. The memories.
They are outmoded and dumb. And I do not envy the athletes being sent to men's basketball media days, and the questions that they may get about basketball sanctions. That will not be fun.
So, yeah, love it to hear student athletes getting punished for things that happened before they got to the school. So sucks to be them. Also, unlike football, these kids have to miss classes, and I know there are definitely people out there that say athletes, blah, 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 they'll be able to make it up, blah, 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 whatever. But I don't care who you are at Georgia Tech. If you're missing class, it is not fun. Swim club misses like 3 days a year for nationals, 2.5 days a year. And like, I can't imagine having to do that multiple times a month, So shout out to them getting some tough questions and having to make up a lot of work. So thank you guys.
Yeah. Tough break. But despite the sanctions, it could be a decent year. We'll just have to wait and see.
It could always appeal too, but we'll see how that goes.
But NCAA gonna NCAA.
Shout out Reed and Patrick though. New basketball guys really killing it on the coverage. Very strong. Definitely have more wise things to say about those previews than I would have. So really nice to have. True. But yeah, if you're listening to this, thanks guys. And also if you're listening to this, go check them out. They do good work. So.
All right, now that Mr. Grant is done being sappy, let's stop burying the lead and get on to yesterday's game versus the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Tech lost 22-38 at home on Cape Day. They debuted the Onyx Gray Choa uniforms. The helmet, which was previously unannounced, ended up being a white outline of the block GT on the usual gold helmet. Before we get into the list of things that I have to say, Mr. Grant, what were your opinions from the stands?
From the stands, I took this game off, so I was a little bit more in terms of being able to just watch and see what was going on. Still don't love the offense. Granted, most of the notes I had thought of for this came from the first half when we were notably not as effective. I don't like having to punt inside the 40. I missed I think I remember seeing someone write somewhere that the first time we'll realize Paul Johnson is gone is when we're going from it on fourth down inside the 40, something like that. It wasn't fourth and short, but it still was like one of those like, just grinds my gears. But Tech thought it was going to be a long road, and I didn't watch any of the Temple game because I had a swim meet I was at last week, but definitely felt at least a little bit less frustrating. It seems like we had a couple good opportunities that slipped through our hands or were over or underthrown, but I don't know. Like I've backed off the cliff of Pat Nod is inept a little bit, and more just like these guys need to learn and practice and get new guys in the system, and the offensive line doesn't help. I don't know. I feel more numb. I've accepted where Georgia Tech football is at. you know.
All right. Well, here's my piece on the whole thing. Having watched the entire game from the splendor of my apartment, the play calling I think was a bit better overall. Now that you have a stable quarterback situation with James Graham,
I did
who,
like
if
Graham.
I let me pull up my stats here real quick. He went 11 for 24 for 171 yards, two touchdowns and two picks. Sub 50 completion percentage. It's not great, but also, I mean, you throw out those two quote unquote incompletions that are picks that ends up being 50%. Like, again, not terrible, like not great, but also I think given the situation that he was in, and also given um, his inexperience, and also given the play calling that he had to deal with, it was this is okay. It's okay. Um, Rushing wise, we looked. Meh. This team is it averaged. Let's see, I have here almost 5 yards a carry, which seems very disingenuous, especially on some runs that were stuffed for about 2 or 3 yards. I'm
Yes.
sure that's boosted by the couple of long runs that Tobias Oliver and James Graham were able to string together late in the game, and also when they were able to scramble and pick up a couple yards too. Um,
Hmm.
the defense was the main point of weakness, but I think parts of it were also because the time of possession was so hugely skewed in UNC's favor. UNC was able to do more or less whatever they wanted on offense. I mean, if Sam Howell hadn't had a couple of drops and a couple of overthrows, this game is easily, I don't know, like 50-55 to 22. Uh, y- like
Eh,
I think on Reddit
yeah.
somewhere, the like Tech's best defender on the day was uh, Sam Howell's dropped pass, and while it's not, it's super true, it's still the Tech defense got bailed out of a number of situations because Howell wasn't able to put a ball right on frame, or someone, or a UNC wide receiver like Daz Newsome wasn't able to haul balls in. Um, but the defense, especially against the run, took a huge step back. Um, but I have to say it's more a fault of the offense not being able to sustain drives. We had a number of drives that ended, after a couple minutes, or like 1 or 2 minutes, and then Tech had to punt, and that's not a great way to get your defense off the field, get them rested, and then get them ready to go out again. I think pass defense wise they did pretty well. Rush defense wise, not so great. But even in the pass defense, he could start to see that wear and tear sort of take hold. And sometimes they got out finessed uh, by smaller receivers.
Yeah. Couple plays where we got hands on the ball and didn't reel it in probably contributes to that too. But I don't know. Howell's clearly an unpolished quarterback, sideline, or just over underthrowing. I agree with you on it could have been worse, but I don't know. There's nothing particularly glaringly bad other than just a banged up offensive line
Hmm.
that I don't know, like yes, the rush was uninspiring, but at the same time, like passing got a little bit better, but also, a couple big names in the skill department went out with Lucas and Jalen Camp being gone and stuff like that. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's a win, but I mean, this sounds weird. Felt a lot less demoralizing than the last win. I feel like there's a couple positives we can take away that you hit on. So I don't know.
Yeah, just the
Wasn't a
let's
win.
see, let's rattle off a few stats here. Tech had 52 plays to UNC's 97. So, I mean, right
Yep.
there's your time of possession difference. Tech
Yep.
averaged 6.1 yards per play. So, I'm sure that's buoyed by a lot of those late game long runs while UNC was defending over the top rather than bringing pressure. Um,
Yeah.
Tech averaged 1.83 yard or points per drive, and then 26 and a half ish yards per drive. So, you know, on the face, those aren't terrible numbers. Um, you definitely want to see that better execution. That points per drive metric, especially, is a I would say it's a pretty key execution metric, right? Like you have 12 drives, but you're only returning 22 points on those. You need to
Yeah.
get better at executing. Punting on 6 of those drives is not, or 6 or 7. I don't have that number in front of me right now, but that's not that's not functional effective offense right there.
Well, it's just not an offense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Couple other numbers here. Average field position, Tech usually started at the 27, uh, which seems
that's a little
weird to think
high.
about. Yeah, it seems a little high, but that's the way that the numbers broke. Um, Anything else on this list of numbers that sticks out to you is interesting?
Um, yeah, the average field position seems a little high. Honestly, the number of drives seems a little low, but I mean, obviously, that's not something that running the stats is gonna confuse. The pass success rate allowed 49% is problematically high, considering our defense and our secondaries purported to be our best unit on the field. Um,
Let me see
I
if I can find the national average for that. Vamp for a second for me.
Yeah, again, this is the first time we've had like these advanced stats. We put them together, or actually put them together himself. I'm not going to take any credit for this. Both good and bad. But I don't know. The rates look all right. Explosive plays allowed, havoc. Yeah, it's fine. Um, and the stuffs looks okay too. I don't know. It's just I'd like to see more chaos. I'd like to see more, uh, just more not impulse. It's not acceleration. It's like
Oh my god, are
I
you
just need.
bringing physics into this?
I'm trying to bring physics into it. Yeah, like just those moments, those peaks. Like I don't know. There wasn't a lot of like again, this is a dumb thing to judge it off of, but like those highlight plays. There was no Georgia Tech moment where I was like, yeah. Other than that interception on the first drive, that really got not that got the fans into it, but like you know what I mean. Like
Yeah, I would
the
add
team was a little bit flat
there was
too.
the touchdown pass. There was James Graham's touchdown pass, which was the first one to Malachi Carter on the
Yes,
north end zone?
north end zone.
North
Yeah,
end zone,
that was
yeah.
north.
And then he had another one to Amory and Brown, I think, in the south end zone. But the north end zone one, really, you could hear how loud it got on the broadcast. It really fired everyone back up, and you could see like there was a little bit more life in the team after they got that score, and then they started. Defense hunkered down a little bit, but and the offense seemed like they started getting into a little bit of rhythm.
Is this where I say that the stadium would be louder and more into it if we played space chords and the band wasn't neutered half the time again? Because
Yes.
I feel like that's an trope. But
Um,
I mean,
I don't have
it's
our third down
it's not
stats
for
on here, but let me.
mm, it's not for lack of people telling athletics that whatever they're doing isn't working. Like I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I know that like for all the listeners out there, it's really easy for somebody who knows me outside of the capacity of from the rumble seat to say like, "Hey, like you were pretty invested in how things used to be." I was football chair of the Ramblin' Rec Club last year. That's it's a lot of change, and it's a lot different from the atmosphere that I helped create. And yes, like I take that a little bit personally, but at the same time, like there's a noticeable difference. And I think whether it applies to somebody who's an alumni, the kids in the band who have always done things a certain way or whatever, or students that that feel how they do about games. Like, I don't know. Like, there's not a lot of consistency between cutting between uh, piped in stuff and the band and new versus old. It's just not a very consistent look, and I don't want it to fail. I want what they're doing
Mhm.
to work out for them, but like the one thing that people got into is the one thing that they say they can't do, and I feel like it's a great embodiment of the like, oh, effort-based defense, oh, above the line, oh, uh, we're gonna run a pro style spread off the option, not option, offense,
Player-based
just to,
scheme.
yeah, exactly. To like different for the sake of different is what it feels like, and like you're never like, I thank goodness that Georgia Tech has done such a good job of creating history and traditions and like a culture that the Ramblin' Wreck is never not going to be there. Like, not I'm knocking on some wood here. Like,
Uh-oh.
that is a thing that is never going to change. The whistle blowing between classes is something that's never going to change. The lights on top of Tech Tower, never going to change. But if you eat at it, wow, this is a surprisingly biblical allegory, but you build traditions around stuff like that, and like, yeah, there's stuff in the middle that you never want to touch, but you're kind of picking around the outside, you know, and
Picking around
not
the
that it's going to make the whole
foundation.
thing, but like, there's a reason we build traditions around our traditions around our traditions. It's because that's how we protect the most sacred thing.
To bring it back to football for a second, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure our conversion rate or conversion rate allowed was actually worse on money downs than it was on space chord downs. So um, take
Run all
that
those
for
numbers.
analytics.
Oh,
I did not run
yesterday.
those
Okay.
numbers. That is just um, empirical observation
Oh,
there.
like counting when they did one versus the other kind of thing.
Yeah. So
Well,
I think
you can hear a difference in the crowd, how they respond to it.
I think again, I think it's what we've been saying. It's different, and I agree. Like this might be where we're um taking differentiating from the old regime a little too far, but it it's like the second or third home game. I think as you get further and further in, there's going to be more tweaking, more adjustment. There's going to be We're going to see a little bit more compromise between the new and between the old, and especially I think if and I think we said this over the summer at one point, if Tech doesn't start winning within a reasonable amount of time, a lot of this weird stuff is going to start getting old very quickly. Um, we can, and we, listeners out there, like Jake and I are still a little bit of old souls ourselves, so we get a little bit curmudgeonly whenever someone wants to change something that we've experienced for 4 or 5 years. But it, I think we'll reach that point when it's either something will have to give, and we'll have to and we'll see a lot more fusion rather than okay, let's just wholesale replace.
I I agree with you, and I know I'm a fourth year. I'm not somebody who's been around the block nearly as long as a lot of our listeners and a lot of great Georgia Tech people. I just wish I can't imagine how it feels or seems to be somebody who didn't like the option, and this is like so awesome and like brand new for them, because that's a
Oh,
totally valid
sure.
point of view. And like, and I can't imagine being somebody who loved the option, or honestly somebody who just loved Georgia Tech and like liked how things were, but I feel like, as and from my experience of talking to uh, peers that are in the band or students just in blocks or in the swarm or whatever,
Hell,
or
like
in the
a
rec club,
recent alumni
like
too.
recent alumni too, of course. I don't feel like anything I say or anyone else has said about it matters. And that's the part that grinds my gears the most. Like, I don't want there to be an echo chamber in the edge. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like,
I
like
again, like I
I
think
can't look
it'll.
at my wallet yet. I just go to games. I don't have this donor power or whatever. Um,
You can
and I don't
dream.
think that's what it is either. But yeah, nothing I say is going to change anything until it actually does something
I
warranting
would.
changing.
I I believe in the staff's ability to appreciate numbers, so I would love it if someone out there could put together the stats, the conversion rate stats for money down and non-money downs, and send them to us so we can maybe forward it along up the chain. Because I'm very interested to see. I'm pretty sure it's lower on money down than it is on non-money down.
I'm,
Um,
I'm saying I want, like, if there was a way to measure decibel levels, I I mean, and there is, but not that I have retroactive decibel level stuff. Like, I'm telling you, it's not just me being a crazy coot
Curmudgeon.
up in the stand. Yeah, that the 20-year-old curmudgeon. That's me.
All right. Well, let's see. So back to the national average that I was looking up, which
Wow,
was
we really took a left turn there, didn't we?
we took a left turn. So we were looking at the pass success rate allowed. The national average for that, according to Bill Connolly, is 41%, and Tech allowed 49%. Just to give you an idea of what that means, I guess more than just a percentage. What this is saying is that on almost half of UNC's passing plays, they were able to achieve success. So on first down, that's defined as getting 50% of the yardage needed. On second down, that's defined as getting 75%, and on third and fourth down, that's 100% of the yardage needed. So when you can't stop anything through the air like that, that's not exactly a glowing report for a secondary that was, I think, this week was named 14th in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not. I mean, again, only 8% above the national average, but I assume if we did it percentile wise, that would be pretty significant.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hats off to UNC, hats off to Mac Brown. They game planned very well, as much as I don't want to admit it. And I will say, Mac Brown admitted himself at halftime that they should have been up more, and they had their chances. And again, we're talking. This game is a couple of Sam Howell drop passes away from being in more of a blowout than 16 points. But UNC also had a bit of an execution problem at points, and it showed at times. It could have been worse.
Yep. They're as incomplete of a team as any. So I think that's just kind of par for the course for the ACC Coastal this year.
I mean, we're looking at a UNC team that came into that game ranked about 60th in SN or SP plus because Bill has since dropped the ampersand. Um, I mean, they weren't as good of a team as I think that near upset bought them hype for, if that makes sense, or that near upset of Clemson bought them
Absolutely.
hype for. They
I
Clemson,
not going to say you have a cold take, but that's a very fair thing to say about them.
yeah, and I think Clemson was always going to have that fluky game where they look like crap. So it was just one of those weeks. It's an any given Saturday kind of thing, and I mean,
Why they
there's
played
definitely a clear quality difference between UNC and Georgia Tech, and I think the result of the game showed that. Like, there's a lot of work left to be done, a lot of talent that needs to get onto the flats in order to be at that same level.
Yep, that's all she wrote.
Yep. All right, Mr. Grant, would you like to talk about next week's game at Duke?
Sure thing. Duke comes into the game 3-2 wins against NCA&T, Middle Tennessee, and Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University, better known as VPSU. Their average margin of victory has been fairly high at 30.
They blew
And their
all of those
losses,
teams out, and they also
yeah,
put a beating. They put a beating on Justin Fuente and the Hokies.
yeah. Also, check out the Twitter account Captain Justin Fuente on Twitter if you're into the old school football tweeting as historical figures kind of thing.
Oh,
That's
is
a
he like
totally
the
different
Captain
topic.
Andrew Luck thing?
Yeah, the news from the front line is poor, blah 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 kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that doesn't even begin to start describing what VT is this season.
Oh yeah, a bloodbath. But
Hmm.
anyways, in their losses versus Bama and Pitt, the average has been a deceivingly small 21, which is definitely helped out by their very narrow 3-point loss this week in or to Pittsburgh. And then they played Bama here in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, Dodge City, Atlanta, Georgia. But they lost to Bama by 39, I believe, doing the math in my head. Yeah,
Yep.
39. And not great, Chief, but yeah, no, Pitt really tried to pit this game
Oh,
again
Pitt
by
went full Pitt in this game. They they blew a 23-point lead in this
they
game,
tried
and
their darndest to lose.
this was a I think this was like a 26-3 game at one point, and Pitt just let Duke claw back into it, get to 30-26. Then Pitt scored like with about a minute left, I think, and then Duke drove down the field and tried to get a 2-point conversion to tie or and win. It was very coastal,
Very vintage Coastal, you might say.
very vintage coastal. Like that was one of the weirdest. I mean, ESPN Instant Classic and all that, but Pitt tried their damnedest to lose. It was one of the weirdest games I've ever read through the box score and through the play-by-play of.
Pittsburgh does not want to win games. They want you to be able to win games. And they're just really nice folks. You know, they'll show you around their city, blah, blah, blah. They'll make sure you don't die on Cardiac Hill, blah, blah, blah. But winning games, like they give you the option to win if you really want it. But I don't know. Just second week in a row. Makes for good entertainment though. Not that I
Oh, makes
watched
for amazing
anything more than
entertainment.
highlights.
Coastal Chaos should be appointment television if you like watching train wrecks in slow motion.
Or just being sad. Honestly, if you want to feel self pity, watch ACC Coastal football.
If you're not an ACC fan and you want to feel good about yourself, watch ACC Coastal football.
It really appeals to everyone.
Love it. Love to see it. All right, so opening line for this in Vegas was Duke by 16. Our good friend, the robot Bill Conley, projects Duke to win by 12.4. The over-under for this game from Vegas was 47.5. Mr. Grant, why don't you start
Yes.
off with your thoughts here?
Well, if you look at Duke by the numbers, they're like an okay team. Their offense isn't spectacular. Their defense holds them up a little bit, and their special teams are pretty good. Um, I don't know. Again, I haven't watched a ton of their games. Just a couple clips from Pitt. Decent chunk of the Bama game, but obviously that's not really probably not a good indicator of where they actually are as a team. And then Virginia Tech, Middle Tennessee, and North Carolina A&T, like that. It's hard to judge this team when they haven't really. Not that they haven't played anybody, Paul, but like I don't know. There's not
It's
really
true.
great
They haven't
yardstick.
really
We have to
played
trust the
anybody.
numbers. They're a decent team, you know.
But at the same time, what you're saying isn't wrong. They really haven't played anybody. I mean, you're talking about FCS NCANT, which is a very good HBCU. Um,
Yes, very good.
MTSU, which they didn't have a line for in that game, I'm pretty sure, or it was very small. Either way, and then Virginia Tech, who is a dumpster fire in its own special way in the middle of Blacksburg. Bama's a mulligan. That's just an outclassing. And then Pitt is the only team that I would say, hey, this is quote unquote somebody. And they still, I mean, they were down 26-3 at one point, and it took a miraculous comeback. I mean, look at these numbers in this game. Um, Pass success rate was 10% for Duke, and again, the national average for that is 41%. The rush
Yeah,
success rate was 20%. Again, national average is 41%. Duke's
I
defense was good, but still not
still
great.
let up 33 points. Like, but like that's okay. If you look at all those teams, you have the good, and then you have the bad, and then you have the really bad. And the good is obviously Alabama. Side note, why they let a team that can't fill half of its home stadium play a prestigious neutral site game in the best stadium on the continent against uh, arguably a team that could fill up a building anywhere that isn't Levi's Stadium is beyond me. But Duke really hasn't, like, yes, the numbers say they have a good defense. And if you look at that, the success rate allowed 33%, pass success rate around 19%, rush success rate allowed 14%. Those are good numbers. Like,
Those
that's
are
not,
very good defensive metrics. Like you're comparing this to a national average of 41%.
yeah. I I don't know. It's just I don't think that they're really much of anything. And that's the thing that makes it hard to draw a conclusion. Like, I don't know. And I get that we play in the ACC Coastal. Like, everyone's kind of just a mess, especially this year of all years. I would, as a Georgia Tech fan, I would love to be able to point fingers at Virginia Tech and Duke and Pitt and call them all garbage and laugh or whatever. But when we're just as garbage as everyone else, then it really is just going to come down to Cutcliffe has been around the block. His team clearly can turn on the Jets when it needs to. Coming back and scoring 27 points is an effective offense, even if it's not that highly regarded by SP Plus data. Also, SP Plus does not roll off the tongue nearly as well as S&P
Bring back
Plus.
the ampersand, damn it.
True. So until we play the game, I don't really know how it's going to turn out. There's no home field advantage in Wallace Wade Stadium, so it's not like that'll change the calculus too much. Honestly, if there's a win that I'd call stealing a win against a run-of-the-mill Coastal team, this is probably a good one to do it against. I mean, the Tecmo Bowl will be a dumpster fire, but I wouldn't call that stealing a win if we get it, especially because it's at home. Tech has
Also
a
because
chance.
it's VT. Yeah.
Yes. Again, it's why you play the games. I think it'll be interesting to see how our pretty decently ranked defense stacks up against their offense. And I think that that's going to be what this game comes down to. If our secondary doesn't look like a sieve full of holes again, I think that will at least be in the game. But other than
Yeah,
that, we'll
so
see what happens.
you're looking at a battle of two. I wish I could say both of them were top 50, but let's be generous and say two top 54 defenses, because that agrees with my narrative. Duke is ranked 41st in SP Plus. Tech is ranked 53rd. The weird thing about Duke is without Daniel Jones, who is now somehow again the sixth overall pick and now a starting quarterback in the NFL, a somewhat successful starting quarterback, mind you. Um,
He's the Mitchell Trubisky model, but continue.
yes, you're looking at a GT Rush defense that was absolutely taken behind the woodshed versus North Carolina. Play against now Duke starter Quentin Harris, and Duke's weird version of the triple, which, oh my god, it bothers me so much that Cutcliffe runs triple with Quentin Harris, and he is going to run it against Georgia Tech, and it is going to really, really get under my skin.
Yeah.
Ah, man, let's see. The key thing here, I think, is you have to. Duke is, let's see, they had a 21.7 havoc rate versus Pitt. That's to put that in perspective, that was 18 havoc plays of, I want to say Pitt had 90, 95 total plays. That's a lot. That is 18 tackles for loss, passes defended, interceptions, and um, sacks or forced fumbles, I believe. So if you have a defensive front that can create that much chaos, there's bound to be a lot of trouble. And they were also decent at stuffing the run too. I mean, um, you look at 7 defensive stuffs, and about 20% of the time they were stuffing Pittsburgh run plays. I think it's going to come down to, can Tech throw the ball effectively given an effective defensive front from Duke? Can they also can they prioritize using the run to setting up the pass, and then also be able to improve upon a like a 47% completion percentage mark from the UNC game? That's going to be your key.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yes. No,
Not
that
much to
works.
add.
But no, say yeah, sure, send it.
Oh man, it's hard talking strategy and sounding like I'm not trying to talk out of my butt. You need to give me some support here.
I mean, you said it well. The numbers back up what you're saying. I don't know. I I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a lot of thoughts on Duke. Their havoc plays pretty high. That might come into play this week, but you kind of nailed it. I don't know. I'm kind of on the same vibe right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, stop the run, force Quentin Harris to pass. Try not to fall victim to Cutcliffe Devil Magic, and you might pull out a win in Wallace Wade Stadium, or Wallace Wade. I don't know. You called it like a mausoleum last time.
Wallace Wade High School, yeah,
Okay, I'll take that. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that puts a
Um,
bow on next week's game versus Duke. Jake, do you want to run us through the ACC Coastal tasting menu for this week?
I want to do the prop bet in there first. Over under on 60% capacity utilization this week
Oh
at
no,
said
I forgot that
dumpster
I put
fire.
that in there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
It'll, yeah. Duke does not have good attendance. I also have not cross-checked that number. Ugh. It's gonna, it's gonna be a weird day at Wallace Wade Stadium. I will say that.
Fair enough.
Cutcliffe Devil Magic, man. Weird stuff.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to note is that Duke's all-time attendance record is 57,500, which is only the fourth time that Wallace Wade has drawn more than 50,000 fans. Now it only
Oof.
seats 40,000, of course. And the last time Georgia Tech rolled up there with a team that was decidedly better than the one that we have this year. Let's just say it was a bit empty, and I'm pretty sure Georgia Tech students outnumbered Duke students. So that's probably why I hope to never go back there, or at least not for a long time. But you know, Georgia Tech doesn't have to worry about a lot of things in terms of intimidation and stuff like that. I'd put the long under on that prop bet. Long under.
All right. Cool. We'll keep track of that one. We'll check the numbers at the end of the week. We'll see how that one went. But
But they
moving
got to
on.
count it Miami style, not the oh, we sold all these tickets but nobody showed up kind of thing. The
Turnstile.
like Marlon psych, only 9,000 people actually come to the games kind of thing.
We'll see. We'll get into some nice crowd shots, and we'll be able to tell from there.
Mhm. All right.
Tasting menu.
Yeah. Not too many going on. Actually only two. We got 8 p.m. Friday on ESPN. Virginia, number 20, Virginia, is the 1 point Miami down in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens.
That is such a weird line. The fact that Miami, well, one, Miami is favored, and two, Miami's only favored by one. This is effectively saying what? That both of these teams are equal, and Miami's not even getting a home field bump for this one.
Yeah.
Ugh, give me UVA. UVA is much better.
Same. I'd also like to take this time to note that said Miami Stadium that I referenced before is built on the site of the Orange Bowl, which would be a much better place for Miami to play football games. But sadly, it is now a giant white retractable roof baseball stadium. Virginia still wins this game. Hard Rock Stadium still sucks. Go Who's? That feels dirty, but
Question mark? Go Who's question mark. Put the question mark in there. It'll make you feel better. All right. Moving on.
In there. Yes. Saturday, 4 p.m. ACC Network, the worldwide leader in ACC sports. Rhode Island, noted FCS team that exists, is playing at Lane Stadium. Virginia Poly and Virginia Polytech is favored by a lot.
Yeah, there was no line available in this one. I don't know. I'm actually kind of concerned that VT is going to lose this one and Fuente is going to get canned this week. He should have
Can
been
you get
canned.
left on the tarmac in your own town?
Well, he should have been left on the tarmac in Miami, but they somehow won.
Go figure, man.
God.
Well,
Oh
like
my God, he almost blew a 28-point lead in Miami.
If they manage to lose to Rhode Island, they will be now the most recent ACC Coastal team to lose to a powder blue FCS team, and I think I'd like that a lot. So
I like those advanced stats.
Oh, just big numbers guy over here.
Big J, big numbers guy. All right, so that wraps up the ACC slate. It's really weird. I think now that we're getting into situations, or I guess weeks, where all the coastal teams are playing each other, the slate slims down considerably. Wish we had more meat. Maybe we'll expand this to the entire ACC next week.
True. And then we got big balls, right?
Indeed. All right. So I picked on our written podcast last week. I picked number 6, Oklahoma, over Kansas by 35. Guess what? Kansas covered 35 points. And also, that screwed me over in our FTRS pick'em pool. So I will forever rooting for Boomer Sooner. Mr. Grant, what did you pick last week?
I picked a game that still has yet to happen because I'm dumb and I went to Google for my schedule instead of a real sports website. And I picked Indiana to cover 25 against Rutgers for their homecoming because that is an important game in my house. But that's next week at 12, not yesterday at 12 like I thought because I'm dumb. So instead, my Paul's Big Balls call of the week is going to be a Paul Johnson big tweet call. That was my favorite. Favorite thing I saw on Twitter this week, where he says, sometimes it is better to remain silent and let people think you don't know what is going on than constantly speak and remove all doubt. So thanks to the old head man for giving us some wisdom there for our week. Also, go Hoosiers. The Scarlet Knights are garbage. Happy homecoming.
Rutgers fired Chris Schass last week, and their new head coach has the name of a pasta dish. So there's that.
Isn't his last name Campanile?
Campanile. or however you would say it in Italian, or in a very obnoxious fake Italian New Jersey accent.
I heard a parent say Campanile this weekend. That
Oof.
felt dirty.
It's supposed so apparently this is a sidebar, and I'll get to my pick in a moment. But apparently we
Us
pronounce
giving a
Campanile
sidebar?
wrong. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be pronounced a different way, but Tech pronounces it wrong. I was told this by someone in from Berkeley, and I was
Yeah. They have
stunned.
Campanile. Mm-hmm. I get
No,
yelled
I'm
at
not
that
saying
from
that.
my boy out of Berkeley all the time too.
I'm not saying
Um,
that.
no, that sounds dumb. Sorry,
I'm
Conrad. Sorry,
saying
Berkeley
Campanile.
people.
I'm saying
Um,
Campanile.
Also, we do have the dumber Campanile though, because it's supposed to have bells that ring, but for whatever reason, Tech decided to just not fix it when it broke or turn it off or something. But
The
yeah,
Campanile
so
used
our
to have a
bell tower.
lot more features when it was originally installed, and they have, and I assume someone messed with those bells at some point.
Yeah, um, I would like for our bell tower to have bells again, but I'm also a sap, as we've established in this very podcast tonight.
Multiple
So I'll
times.
stop. Oh, many times. Anyways, this has been a great tangent. What's your pick?
All right. Game day is in Baton Rouge for number 7 Florida versus number 5 LSU. For some reason, Florida is favored by 13. I think there's a chance I read it wrong, so I'm going to check. Mr. Grant, please stall for time for me here.
Uh, there once was a man from Peru who dreamed he was eating his shoe. He woke with a fright in the middle of the night and found that his dream had come true.
Nice. So I did read it wrong, and it's actually LSU by 13. Um, so does that change my pick? I don't know. Do I feel like LSU can cover 13 points? Joe Burrow is nasty. Florida might be on their third string quarterback. All right, give me LSU and by 13. Joe Burrow is a very very disgusting human being of a quarterback. He's very very good at his job. I want to see
Yep.
more of that LSU offense that is weirdly powered by what I assume is voodoo magic from the Bayou.
Yay. You know what I learned this week?
What?
I think both Auburn and Florida have shots at beating UGA. And I think that makes me happy.
From your lips to God's ears, my friend. From your lips to God's
Hopefully,
ears.
man. Hopefully.
When is that game? That's at the end of the month. One of
Uh,
those games is at the
the
end of the month.
the world's largest indecent exposure rally. I don't know.
That one's at the end of the month. Yeah, that one's the same weekend as our homecoming. So, wonder what'll happen. Who knows?
Ironically, neither of those teams will be at home that weekend. But you'll be here, and to everyone who comes into Atlanta for that weekend at our next home game, which is a long time from now, we're looking forward to seeing y'all on the flats.
Yeah, it's a brutal 3-week road trip. Let's see, Duke. Then, as I Google the schedule because I don't have it in front of me, so you're looking at Duke, and then at Miami, and then a bye. So I guess
Yep.
you can't lose the bye, and then versus Pitt on November 2nd at home for homecoming. It's a weird thing to not play at home for an entire month, but that's how the schedule makers drew it up. So that's what we're
I'll
going
take
with.
the four home games in November. That is fantastic. Big fan.
That's a lot of money.
Big fan.
Those
A
are
lot of
decently
money. And
sized teams.
it's decently chilly by then too. So
Maybe some of those will
better
be at
football.
night. At least the NC State game is an 8 p.m. kick, so you'll get that. It's also
Pitt,
on a Friday.
probably not for Pitt, but
yeah, 11 o'clock slot on the ACC network. Here we come.
don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Akshay.
All right. Anything else to
No, sir.
discuss?
I think
All
that's
right.
it.
All right. So enjoy your second week of October, everyone, and we will see you next week. Have fun.